Good evening, I'm Kathy Whiteman. In a previous edition of Profiles, we talked with former Councilwoman Jackie Townsell about her early years in Bear Creek and her work with the community's young people. We'll learn about her move from private citizen to public servant and why she's always felt the importance of helping her fellow man on this week's Profiles. The early 70s brought change to Irving. The need for action pulled Jackie Townsell out of private life and into public service. It was a role she would play for the next 18 years. From election to the Irving City Council in 1977, through countless boards and committees, Jackie Townsell has become a fixture in the Irving community and in county government. Her sister, Imogene Rogers, often accompanied her in her duties. Through it all, Jackie still made time for fun. Jackie Townsell's achievements are numerous, and they are embedded into the very heart of the community. She has devoted her life to making the dream of Jack and Ola Howard come true. Bear Creek and Irving are a good place to raise a family. You have been in the public eye for such a long time that some of us in the city think that you've just always been there. But it always has to start somewhere.
That's right.
Do you think it was your church life, your church experience, your experience with the PTA? Where did your public service get started?
Well, I think my noticeable public service started at that PTA meeting, that particular one that I mentioned where they were going to close our school. And then after that, there was a couple of little small incidents that happened at the school where they sent our children. And so I was called upon by the principal to come and see what I could do. And I called my pastor, Reverend Stevenson, and he and I went over to the school. We spent 2 weeks at the school every day, going every morning. And of course, at that time, I had to pay somebody to run my store while I'm gone. But we took care of the situation, and everything worked out fine. There was this rumble one time, you may have already heard this story, that the kids, a couple of boys got into a fight out on the football field, I believe it was, and the white children outnumbered the black children like 20-1. And so, because they came from a small school, and they was kind of like thrown over there, and they hadn't had that environment, and so the black children started a rumor that they had people coming from West Dallas gonna come and help them, like the black Muslims or somebody, and so what do they want to say that for? It started parents coming and taking the kids out of the school. The white parents, and maybe a few blacks too. But they started coming, taking the kids out of school. It was just a mess. And the principal, he just threw up both hands. He didn't know what to do because he couldn't talk to the kids. But anyhow, we worked all of that out, but we had to meet with the parents and meet with the kids, those kids who were involved in the little fracas and everything. And Reverend Stevenson and I, we had to stand in the halls every day when the classes changed, because that's where all the tension was. That's where the fights might break out. But anyway, to make a long story short, the end result was we got everything worked out. The principal and the kids and all of us, we met and met with the parents and everything, so everything worked out. The end result was we felt that the kids from this community needed someone that they could relate to. Like if they get in trouble and need somebody to talk to, they was not accustomed to go and talk to the principal who was white. So we said, we think we need a counselor, a black counselor. And that's where Mr. Aaron Day, he's retired now, but they put him in that position. Everything worked out okay, but
it's hard.
Our life was in danger in those days.
Yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of misunderstanding. Not that things have changed that much.
No, true.
But they've changed enough so that it doesn't always have to be a black-white issue.
Right, that's true. And it had a lot to do with understanding each other. And I always felt in my heart it had a lot to do with the kids not being able to relate to one another because they never had been around each other, you see. Mm-hmm. So that had a lot to do with it. So that was one of the things too that sort of brought me into the limelight of focus where people noticed me. And I became precinct chairman in this precinct when they created a 1179 number precinct. This was, it had its boundaries, but anyway, I became that precinct chairman, and I was that for 9 years. So once you become precinct chairman, if you really work at it and not just take the name, well, you get to know everybody from the governor on down, and I got to know everybody because I went everywhere.
What did your job as precinct chairman involve?
As precinct chairman, your job is to hold the elections whenever there's an election. I probably went over and beyond the duty of precinct chairman because I saw to it that people got elected. I mean, well, I did too, but that people got registered to vote. The poll tax deal was gone then, I believe.
What was the poll tax? Because that was a really kind of a difficult part of having the right to vote. If you had to also go and pay a poll tax before you could vote.
You had to pay $1.75. In fact, I have one. I don't have it here with me, but I can show it to you. I have one. That it was $1.75, and it's a sheet of paper, and it's from Ben Gill, the tax assessor, and you use that to vote with. That was your voting card.
And if you could not pay the poll tax, you could not vote.
You could not vote, that's right. And so, anyhow, I think those kind of things is what kind of brought me into the limelight.
So, now you've been through mediating this very difficult and dangerous situation in the schools, and you're precinct chairman, and you're starting to become very involved in public life, meeting public figures.
That's
and
true.
people are starting to say, Jackie Townsell, why don't you run?
Yes, they did, a lot of them. I didn't think it was the time. I didn't feel it, that it was the time. And because even when I ran for city council the first time in '74, I started out with 2 strikes against me, being black and being a woman. But I didn't let that really bother me, because I figured, I always think positive about things like that. I figured, I can overcome that. And I got out there and I almost won, but I lost my first race,
But it was a significant race.
Oh, very, yes.
You tied, or I don't remember the details.
No, I had, it was 8 of us, I believe, running for place 8. It was 2 women, Joyce Pittman, and I know she won't mind me calling her name. She and I was in the race, the 2 women, and we had 6 or 7 men. And Joyce and I won. We were the top vote getters, so we was in a runoff together, she and I. That's in '74. And in the runoff, Joyce beat me by like 235 votes or something like that.
And this is
so she became the councilwoman, the first woman on the council. But I was a part of that history to make the first woman on the council.
That's right. You certainly were.
So Joyce Pittman was the first woman. Yeah. She still lives here in Irving.
And to have only lost by 200 votes in an at-large position is pretty significant.
True. That's right.
People had begun to know who you were.
I was so encouraged by that race. I only had 1 door slammed in my face. Well, there was a gentleman sitting on the porch. He was an elderly person. He saw me coming, and I think he knew what was going on. I'm coming to campaign, so he just got up and went in the house, slammed the door. So I just went on to the next house. But during that time, it was a tedious thing, for a lot of people. But everything was so nice. People were so nice to me and so encouraging to me that I decided I'm going to do this again when the right time comes. So that was in '74. So in '77, a seat became available at large again on the council, and I ran for it, place 7, and that's how I won.
Did you run your
I had 2 opponents, and I beat them both without a runoff that time.
Tell me about that race. Two opponents and with no runoff.
Yeah, one of them is a very good friend of mine today, Jack Spurlock. He was one. And then another gentleman who I had known through the years, his name was Johnny Watson. He's deceased now, but he was a nice fellow. And so we ran, and I won without a runoff. So I think what had happened 3 years back, people didn't forget me. They came out in my behalf.
Well, you said you'd run when the time was right.
Yeah,
I suppose the time
I felt
was right.
it in my heart,
Yeah.
so I did it.
Yeah. Did you run your campaign from Townsell Grocery?
Oh yes, all the campaigns, yeah.
Every single one.
Of course, I used different friends' offices for different things, but yeah, I ran it right from here.
Tell me about that first year as a junior council member on the council, first African American on the council. How were you welcomed?
Well, I had quite a few news reporters ask me for quite a few months after I was elected, do I feel, how do I feel being up here with all men and just myself, all white men and Jackie Townsell? And they wanted to know, are they treating you any different? Are they letting you, they would ask me questions like, letting you get by with things because you're a woman? I said, no, they treated me, I won't say they treated me like one of the fellows, but, we all had respect for each other, and I really believe they all respected me for what I had up here. It wasn't to do with whether I'm a woman or what, or whether I'm black.
Yeah.
I still feel that way. And I worked with some very, very good mayors and council members all through those years.
You have seen extraordinary changes in Irving.
Yes, I have.
In the time that you have been in public office.
That's true.
In '77, when you first came on the council, one of the first big achievements, what would you consider one of the first big achievements of the city as it moved from being a bedroom?
Of the city itself? Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest achievements that the city made was when Mr. Carpenter started the Las Colinas developments. That was one of the things that helped to, of course, the airport too, but that helped to bring the city of Irving into the limelight quite a bit, the Las Colinas area. Of course, the city council took a lot of flack in those days about the developments over there because I think a lot of the people were misled in their thinking that the city was spending a lot of money there when we should be spending it over here somewhere else. But it really wasn't that way, and I won't go into all the details, but it was quite different from what a lot of people thought, such as like just simple thing like flowers that were being planted in the medians. People said, jumped on the city council about that, but Mr. Carpenter had his own nursery and he had his own men do that. That was nothing the city was doing, and they did their own watering and everything,
So people had the perception that...
and not the water that we all have to drink either. This was treated water they were using, but people just didn't realize all these things. So.
Sure. So that was one of the, probably one of the difficult public relations things that the city council had to explain. I hope that you won't be too modest to answer this question.
Oh, I won't. I'm not modest.
Yeah, I think you are, but it's okay. What do you think was your first major achievement on the council?
Well, it was several things, but I believe one of the most major achievements, and I have to keep saying this over and over again, was here in the Bear Creek community to help people get bathrooms inside, water and sewer. Mm-hmm. I believe that was one of the major things. There were a number of things, but I think that was the most major one.
I don't know if people have a very clear picture of just how late water and sewer service came to this area.
A lot of people probably don't.
Tell me about that.
Well, I think there's quite a few people who don't realize. And also, you probably may have noticed some of the things that are going on now with some new people in the area and new movements, which is good in a way. Anything positive that will help a community such as Bear Creek or other parts of the city. I agree with positive things. It took a lot of foundation building to get to where we are today. Now that we have gotten to this point, then the way has been paved so that a lot of the things that are happening now can happen. But somebody had to do the infrastructure. And that's where I feel that I came in. Even though it's being said by a few that I didn't do anything. But you know what infrastructure is.
Yes.
That's your foundation. You got to get under here and do all these things on the bottom first to hold up, and then you can start on the top.
And those are the things that you can't go out and point to and say, here's this sewer line and here's this water line. I can imagine.
So
when did the first water and sewer lines come through the whole community? When would you say that?
It was in the 80s.
In the 80s?
Yeah. Maybe it was like 82 or somewhere in there, or 83. It was in the 80s.
So there are kids now who are, say, 20 years old that might have a memory of an outhouse.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, they would remember.
Yeah, that'll help people place just how recently.
It's been very recent. That's true.
That period of time after the school situation, and say once you were on council in 77 up to about 82, 83, those were some transitioning times for the city of Irving in terms of race relations.
That's true.
It's been said to me on more than one occasion that Dallas and in particular Bear Creek didn't have the kind of clash between the races that other metropolitan areas and other areas that are small communities like Bear Creek had in bringing integration in.
That's true.
But you lived here.
Yeah, I was
What
there.
was your perception of how people felt?
Well, back in those days, yes, there were people in a movement, so to speak, who would come into the area and try to get little communities such as this all cranked up, against the establishment, so to speak, and get you marching down there and want to set things afire or whatever. These was really said to us, right here in my store, in fact. And the people in this community didn't see it that way. We knew that we were being pushed back and not getting things that we should be getting at the time, but we felt that it was another method and another way to go about getting it. And so we worked towards that end to try to get it. And one of the things I'm saying is West Irving, remember I told you the West Irving Improvement Association was organized so that it could work with the authorities to try to get help and get things for the community.
So you decided, you and the other people that were in leadership in this community decided that maybe the best way is not to go and burn something down, but to try to build something up.
That's right. You have to approach the ones that's got it positively, in a positive manner. And when you do, then I think you get positive results.
Do you think that is one of the reasons that Bear Creek still exists as a community? This is one of the oldest historically African American communities in North Texas.
That's true. That's true. I think it's the strong people here in the churches. Now, at one time, I forget the name of that government program, but they started this new government program where they was building houses in the Dalesworth section. And that's a long story in itself, too, because they didn't just build houses and give it to you. A lot of people lost their homes behind it. But anyhow, they started that program. Irving looked at that program, at least some of the people in this community did, about why Irving didn't do it, too. This was way back in the 60s. And I can't remember the name of the program, but anyway, Irving didn't get into that program, but Grand Prairie did. A lot of people moved away for better, where it was better, where there was already water and sewer and already bathrooms in and stuff like that, those who could afford to. So they abandoned a lot of the old houses which were substandard. That's why you see so many vacant lots, because there used to be houses on a lot of this land around here. and a lot of people, big families. Well, they moved away. And I had a number of people ask me why Jim and I didn't move, you know. And I said, well, you know, I could see something in Bear Creek, in this community. And at the time, I didn't know it was historical, mind you. I had no idea. But I could see this place being a beautiful place to live someday. And so I stayed here and struggled with it to try to help to bring it up to par.
The people make the community.
Yes, they do.
And there have been families like yours who stayed.
That's
families
true.
like the Greens who stayed,
Yeah.
and the Triggs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it's the character
Right.
of those people pulling together.
Right. See, this community was founded by freed slaves. I found all this out doing an interview that with a Dallas Morning News reporter back in, I don't know if it was in the 70s, I think it was. He did an interview with me, and then he went and found out that, I don't know what made him start to check, but he found out that this community was a historical community. And so he told me all this stuff about the community founded by free slaves, all this stuff. So from that point on is when all this historicalness started coming in. But anyway, one of the strong points about the whole thing is that those freed slaves who founded this community, their family, offspring, all that, they're all still here, still in this community. So that's the foundation, you see, for the staying power.
Yes. And it takes staying power through losing your community school.
Yeah.
And losing
we lost it, we got
families.
it back.
Tell me about getting J.O. Davis reopened.
Oh boy, I tell you, that was the greatest thing. But see, that's another long story. I hope your tape is long enough to take all this stuff.
Let's talk about J.O. Davis.
Well, the schools, the Irving Independent School District, they was bursting at the seams, needed another elementary school, so they thought about, they needed one out this way, so they thought about purchasing, I believe, in Town Lake or Pioneer Valley, somewhere over there, purchasing a piece of land. And it's my understanding that, you know, the property is so expensive that they started kind of backing off and wondering now, what can we do? I'm just saying this. They didn't tell me this, but I assumed it. So they looked at J.O. Davis School up there, and they said, well, you know, we got this building here, and I'm just putting words in their mouth, and why don't we refurbish this and open the school up here? Yeah. Well, anyway, they made the decision to open that school up again. And when they made that decision, then the white families over on the Grand Prairie side, they went up in arms. The white families in Town Lake and Pioneer Valley, they went up in arms, so to speak. You know, they didn't want their kids coming over into this community. So I, along with a couple of other council members, started meeting with them, telling them about, and one of the reasons I wanted to be there so I could tell them about this community and the people in it so they wouldn't be afraid. One lady told me that her son, when they just knew the school was going to go ahead and open anyway, that her son told her after she drove him around over here, he was scared of those houses. And I told her, I said, you know, some of the sweetest people you could ever meet live in those houses. They just can't afford to live in nothing any better, you know.
Yeah.
He was a little boy, he don't know. But since the school opened, the people who bring their kids to school there from Pioneer Valley, Town Lake, and the apartments all around, they are just so happy and thrilled. It's one of our better schools.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think I convinced them that they didn't have to worry about their children, nothing happening to them. You know, something can happen anywhere. But I told them, I said, you go down and check with our police department, and you'll find out that this community is the lowest crime rate. And one lady in the back said, I already did, and they told me that. You know, what I was trying to let them know is it's just regular people live here. You know, we all want the same thing.
It brings to my mind the situation that you had all those years ago in, I guess it would have been Irving High School, when the kids, the older kids, were all thrown in together with no preparation.
That's right.
And no prior knowledge of each other. How much different would that situation have been today, if people had taught the way you all taught about J.O. Davis.
Yeah. It would have been a completely different situation. I believe even today, the situation would have been different because I believe there would have been some pre-preparation for this. And in those days, there wasn't. And so I think that's part of why we had a little problem. But we never did really have a breakout like they did in other places. You know, I mean, they had to close schools down and stuff for days because of problems. But I think it was because of what we did then that helped the whole situation. And now I'm not saying that I don't want anybody to think that Jackie Townsell is saying that there is no segregation in people. I can't change people's hearts. It's got to come from your heart. You see what I'm saying? We have laws that help, but it's got to be in your heart. I can't change your feelings about how you feel about some race or something like that. But, some people say they don't see color. I guess I don't, because I see people. And I've worked with all people. And it hurts me just as bad to see a little kid, well, no matter what color he is, hurt his foot over there, or whatever. I feel the same as I would no matter what color he is. I don't even think about that.
You have often led by example in that way.
Well.
By example. And I think that that this recent honor that you received,
wasn't that something?
The Bear Creek Heritage Center being named for you,
that was great.
Was a real testimony to the difference that you've made in this city.
Well, I hope I have made a little bit of a difference, because I think as we move about through our daily lives that each of us should try to make a difference. Sometimes I can just be standing in line over at Winn-Dixie grocery store, and I got a whole big pile of stuff, and somebody got one thing. I say, go ahead, and they look at me funny, but I mean, everybody should do some little thing to make somebody else feel good. I love to see other people feel good about some little something I might have did for them or towards them or something. Makes me feel good.
These days that you are no longer on the city council, you've had all those years of council service, and now you're back here at Townsell Grocery making lunch.
Yeah.
Is it time for Jackie now?
Well, I hope so, but I haven't really found it totally yet. The only thing that I can tell right now is I'm acting under the pressure that I didn't realize I was under pressure of all the city operations, everything dealing with the city. I don't get as many phone calls or anything anymore with other people's problems, so I don't have that weight on my shoulders. And I didn't realize it was a weight on my shoulders until I got off the council. So now I'm looking forward to having some time for myself, but I haven't had a lot, except I don't have to make all these evening meetings and things, so I do have that little time, but I'm still pretty busy.
What are you doing these days?
Well, I'm still helping people. People still calling me, coming by my store, asking me things pertaining to the city. And not necessarily just the city, but all kinds of things. If I had gotten paid over the years for being a consultant, I think is what you call it, I'm telling you, I might be sitting in Hawaii or somewhere right now. I guess you'd call me a unauthorized consultant.
I think that's probably
People
a good
come
description.
and ask me everything. They think, I think while you were sitting there, I got a couple of calls there.
Yes.
And this is Sunday.
And someone came to the door as
Yeah.
well.
See, I mean, people come to me and ask me everything, it seems. Well, I still try to help them, however I can. And if it's something to do with the city, then I try to direct them to who they should go and talk to or something like that.